There's a mysterious interstellar object hurtling towards our solar system, exciting scientists across the...
NASA detected a mysterious object speeding toward Earth.
We've got some fresh images of 3I Atlas, a third ever interstellar object observed from Earth, currently racing through our solar system.
A diffuse green shimmer cut across the darkness, frozen in a single frame captured by one of NASA's deep survey telescopes, its luminous arc twisting like a cosmic serpent against the black. It was the first widely released high-resolution image of 3I Atlas, the interstellar visitor that had slipped into the solar system with a trajectory so peculiar and a signature so intense that the scientific community had no choice but to examine every pixel. The agency's press release was brief, almost overly restrained, but the image itself spread instantly across every major platform. It looked less like a comet and more like something defying standard celestial behavior. Elongated, irregular, haloed by a glow no one could immediately explain. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. What caught the world off guard wasn't simply the object's arrival, it was the unmistakable impression that something about 3I Atlas didn't belong to the familiar categories astronomers use to label interstellar debris. Two previous visitors from beyond the sun's gravitational influence, objects that came from other star systems, had already passed through, yet neither 1I Oumuamua nor 2I Borisov matched the strange energy profile or visual complexity captured in this new image. 3I Atlas appeared to twist, fragment, and pulse in ways that could not be reconciled with typical cometary behavior. Scientists who first viewed the raw data admitted privately, though not publicly at first, that something felt unsettling about the structure. It seemed alive in a metaphorical sense, shifting its orientation as though responding to forces that were not gravitational. The released photograph displayed multiple arcs of thin, thread-like material streaming outward, forming spires rather than the usual smooth plume. The coma, normally a diffuse hazy envelope, looked sharply textured, almost patterned, consisting of repeating geometric ripples that appeared too orderly for random outgassing. The shape evoked comparisons to biological structures, crystalline formations, or complex plasma interactions rather than a conventional icy wanderer. The public reaction was immediate. Enthusiasts celebrated the arrival of a new interstellar object, eager to see what mysteries it might reveal, but others sensed something more ominous in its contours. The silence from NASA in the first hours after the image circulated only deepened the sense of unease. The agency usually accompanied such releases with lengthy explanations, anticipating public confusion. This time, the statement was limited to the essentials: its approximate size, its speed, and its projected trajectory past the inner solar system. No attempt was made to clarify the unusual textures or the glow that seemed to pulse from its core. Astronomers worldwide began scrambling to gather data from their observatories, hoping to understand what exactly had entered their neighborhood. Early acid spectrographic readings revealed a chemical composition that diverged significantly from typical comets. Although traces of carbon, oxygen, and silicates were expected, the ratios seemed skewed. More puzzling was a persistent infrared signature that hinted at internal heat inconsistent with a body drifting through interstellar space for untold millions of years. Objects of that type should be cold, inert, and only warmed by their proximity to the sun. Yet 3I Atlas radiated faint warmth from deep within, as though something inside retained energy. This detail alone drew quiet concern among specialists who rarely let their imaginations drift toward the speculative. To retain interior heat over such vast distances would require either a highly unusual composition or a process actively generating it. Fragmentation patterns seen in the image also didn't align with natural cracking or sublimation. Instead of jagged, chaotic edges, 3I Atlas's fractured sections displayed symmetry, long parallel lines running like the grain of wood or the ribs of some alien exoskeleton. The greenish tone captured in the image also provoked fascination. Many comets glow faintly green due to diatomic carbon reacting to sunlight, but 3I Atlas produced a shade far more luminous and saturated than normal, almost neon in intensity. Analysts tried correlating this with elevated carbon emissions, but the math didn't quite work. Whatever created the color wasn't merely chemical. It had an intensity gradient, brightest in precise intervals, as if modulated. That modulation became one of the earliest subjects of public debate. Some amateur astronomers claimed the brightness followed a rhythm that repeated every few hours. Professionals hesitated to confirm any pattern, but internal discussions acknowledged that the fluctuation appeared too consistent to dismiss as noise. Natural objects can rotate or tumble, causing changes in reflected sunlight, but the periodicity here was strangely clean. The modulation also increased in amplitude as the object approached the sun, implying that it was responding dynamically to solar radiation rather than simply reflecting it. The unsettling nature of the image wasn't lost on those outside the scientific community. Artists, writers, and commentators compared it to an organic construct, something between coral and metallic scaffolding. The elongated form looked less like a tumbling rock and more like a vessel or shell that had been worn by time. The glow from within its cracks gave it the appearance of being illuminated by internal veins of energy. The more people stared at the high-definition photo, the stranger it appeared, as if the mind refused to categorize it cleanly. NASA's decision to release the image without providing detailed interpretation led many to speculate that the agency itself did not yet understand what it was seeing. Behind closed doors, researchers were already analyzing every micro-detail, examining the unusual filaments extending from the object, mapping the symmetrical fractures, and attempting to identify the source of the rhythmic glow. With every model they ran, inconsistencies deepened. For each explanation proposed, counterarguments emerged. Some researchers suggested exotic ices reacting to solar wind. Others proposed the object might be porous, with sunlight passing through internal cavities, creating the illusion of geometry. Still others wondered whether electrostatic charging could produce the glowing filaments. None of these hypotheses covered all observed behaviors. The implications of an object behaving unlike any previously observed interstellar visitor began to spread through the astronomical community. Every telescope capable of pointing toward 3I Atlas was ordered to collect data. Radio observatories monitored for any unusual emissions. Although none detected artificial signals, the absence did little to dispel the sense that the object resisted easy categorization. It simply didn't behave like a frozen remnant drifting from a dead planetary system. Instead, it displayed characteristics hinting at a complex internal structure. People around the world studied the released image endlessly. Social media users zoomed in, highlighting curious repeating patterns. Some sections resembled hexagonal lattices. Others featured coiling filaments reminiscent of biological tendrils. The more one enhanced the photo, the more detail appeared, as if the object contained fractal layers repeating across scales. This fractal nature puzzled mathematicians brought in to analyze the image. Fractals appear in nature, but their presence in an interstellar body at this scale raised questions about how such structures could survive untold millennia traveling between stars. As 3I Atlas approached the inner solar system, astronomers began noticing something even more unusual: its deceleration. Interstellar objects typically follow hyperbolic trajectories, accelerating as they swing past the sun before slingshotting out. But observations suggested the object was slowing down, not through atmospheric drag, since it was still far from any dense medium, nor through collisions with debris, which are extremely unlikely in deep space. The deceleration was subtle but measurable, and this anomaly transformed the new image from a curiosity into a point of global fixation. The idea that an interstellar object might alter its speed in a way inconsistent with natural physics unsettled even the most grounded scientists. Theories circulated quietly in academic circles, each trying to offer explanations grounded in known processes. Some proposed outgassing jets providing thrust in the opposite direction, but if that were the case, there should have been visible plumes. The NASA image displayed no such jets, only elongated structures too stable to be exhaust. The shape remained consistent, not flickering or shifting in ways that would accompany active thrust from gas release. Researchers also ran thermal models to determine how sunlight might be absorbed and re-radiated, which could cause minor velocity changes. Yet the patterns remained inconsistent with those predictions. Whatever was happening appeared deliberate, though no one dared to use that word publicly. The image continued circulating as scientists updated the projection of 3I Atlas's path. The object was expected to pass closer to the Sun than its predecessors, but still at a safe distance from Earth. Even so, the level of attention devoted to it grew rapidly. Panels convened to discuss its composition, structure, and movement, though always avoiding conclusions that might be deemed alarmist. The glow inside its fractures intensified the closer it approached the Sun. Telescopes that captured follow-up imagery began detecting subtle shifts in the internal illumination. The light wasn't constant, it rippled outward like waves traveling beneath a translucent surface. Spectral readings revealed wavelengths not characteristic of thermal processes, as though the energy was being emitted in precise bands. This finding became one of the most debated aspects in professional circles. Natural bodies do not typically produce such clean, narrow emissions without being heated to extreme temperatures or containing exotic compounds that decay radioactively. Yet neither scenario matched the observed data. The NASA image was just the beginning, but to the public it remained the defining visual representation of the event. Newspapers and broadcast networks displayed the glowing, serrated shape on their front pages. Headlines speculated, commentators theorized, and the general population found itself confronted with something that felt both wondrous and unnerving. People tend to fear what they cannot classify, and 3I Atlas defied classification more thoroughly than any cosmic visitor before it. Astrobiologists examined the photograph closely, not because they expected life, but because they recognized the importance of ruling out biological signatures. The filaments looked unnatural, yet not definitively alive. The geometric patterns suggested structure, yet not architecture. The glow hinted at energy, yet not intelligence. Every interpretation balanced precariously between natural and unnatural explanations, refusing to settle neatly on either side. The lack of consensus gave rise to discussions about the origin of 3I Atlas. It may have formed in the debris field of a shattered planet around a distant star, its material fusing into unusual configurations under the intense gravitational forces of a dying solar system. Or perhaps it came from a system rich in exotic minerals, unlike anything found in the Sun's vicinity. Another hypothesis suggested it might be a fragment of a much larger body, something akin to an asteroid with exposed internal cavities, its glow the result of complex chemical reactions unleashed after the core fractured. Yet none of these explanations fully accounted for its behavior in the NASA image. The way the structure twisted, the way its glow seemed to pulse rhythmically, and the way its filaments aligned all suggested something beyond mere chance. The questions multiplied. Why did the internal radiance not dissipate uniformly? Why did the structure maintain integrity despite apparent fractures? Why did its surface display such fine detail rather than the smoothed, eroded appearance expected of an object battered by eons in interstellar space? Astronomers monitoring the object noticed another peculiar detail. The filaments extended outward only on one side, always directed opposite the Sun. This asymmetry persisted regardless of the object's orientation, implying the filaments behaved not like dust tails blown by solar wind, but like stable, anchored protrusions responding to some internal mechanism or structural rigidity. Their arrangement resembled the ribs of some colossal organism or the spines of an alien artifact. The NASA image captured this asymmetry clearly. The brightest glow emanated from the region where the largest fractures converged, giving the impression of a core housed beneath layers of translucent material. As the object rotated, the illumination shifted but did not scatter. It behaved as though guided by internal channels or cavities, reflecting an architecture unlike any previously observed in natural celestial bodies. Scientists debated whether the object might be fragmenting further as it approached the Sun, though the image suggested remarkable stability. Rather than breaking apart chaotically, the object retained coherence. as if its internal structure was strong enough to withstand stresses that would normally tear apart volatile comets. If the material composing 3I Atlas was far denser or more resilient than ice and rock, it would explain some features but not the rhythmic pulses or modulations. With the limited data available at the moment the NASA image was taken, experts focused primarily on interpreting its structural anomalies. Engineers compared the geometry to materials that form under extreme pressure, theorizing that the object might be composed of layered crystalline sheets. But the fractal patterns remain too detailed and consistent for random crystallization. A crystal might form repeating geometric shapes, but rarely in such scale-consistent formations across an entire object hundreds of meters long. Some researchers turned their attention to magnetic field interactions. The glow, they argued, might result from charged particles trapped in complex magnetic loops emanating from the object's interior. If 3I Atlas possessed a natural magnetic field, an extraordinary feature for a body of its size, it could explain how it interacted with the solar wind in unexpected ways. Magnetic fields could also theoretically produce filament-like structures if plasma followed the field lines. This explanation accounted for several features, but fell short in explaining the symmetry and the internal warmth. Even the object's shape defied typical cometary profiles. It was elongated with a tapering end and a widening core region, almost spindle-like. The NASA image emphasized this unusual morphology. Instead of a loosely held cluster of rubble, 3I Atlas bore the outline of something carved, refined by forces not entirely random. It had sharp angles where none should exist, and contrasting smooth curves that looked sculpted by processes unknown. The public fascination grew not merely because of the object's appearance, but because of what it represented: a piece of matter from a distant star system passing through the domain of humanity's sun. This alone captured imagination, but the image's contents elevated the event into something cinematic and eerie. Astronomers accustomed to studying distant phenomena with dispassionate rigor found themselves confronted with a visitor that challenged their assumptions about interstellar debris. Every new enhancement of the NASA image revealed details that raised further questions. Grain patterns within the object's core resembled striations found in metamorphic rock, but the surrounding filaments looked more like metallic strands. The outer layer displayed a sheen that could indicate mineralized compounds unfamiliar on Earth. The brightness levels around certain cracks suggested internal cavities filled with luminescent gas or energized particles. These layers spoke to a geological history or physical origin that was unlike anything born within the Sun's planetary neighborhood. Discussion turned inevitably toward the possibility that the object had interacted with forces unknown, perhaps passing near a supernova remnant, a magnetar, or a planet with extreme atmospheric conditions that altered its composition. The glowing fractures might be remnants of such encounters. Yet even these scenarios struggled to explain the rhythmic fluctuations or the internal heat signature. The NASA image also sparked renewed interest in the idea that interstellar space contains many objects unlike anything in our system, shaped by conditions impossible to replicate in local laboratories. 3I Atlas might simply be an example of such exotic formation, alien not in the sense of intelligence, but in origin. The unsettling quality of the photograph lay in its ability to evoke a sense of unfamiliarity so profound that the imagination filled in the gaps left by scientific uncertainty. As the object continued on its trajectory toward the inner solar system, astronomers prepared for the moment when it would come closest to the sun, hoping the increased light would reveal more details. Yet the NASA image remained the most iconic representation of the early phase of observation. People across the world saved it, studied it, and speculated endlessly about what lay beneath the glowing surface and fractal-like exterior. The fascination stemmed not from conclusive data, but from the ambiguity itself. The implications were profound even without arriving at any definitive interpretation. An interstellar visitor with such strange characteristics challenged existing models of cosmic formation. It forced scientists to rethink assumptions about the variability and diversity of material drifting between stars. It sparked renewed interest in the origins of planetary systems beyond the Sun and the conditions that might produce objects with such anomalous properties. The moment the NASA image was released, it became clear that 3I Atlas would not be dismissed as merely another curiosity slipping through the solar system. The photograph captured something that felt ancient, powerful, and inscrutable. It stood as a reminder that the universe still holds mysteries that defy explanation, and that even with the advanced tools of modern astronomy, humanity remains humbled by what drifts in from the dark. The strangeness of 3I Atlas deepened as more observatories locked onto it, though the public continued returning to that first NASA image as the anchor point for their curiosity and unease. What began as a single frame quickly expanded into a growing catalog of observational data, and each new stream hinted at properties more perplexing than the last. Astronomers noticed that the object did not merely glow from within, it seemed to cycle through subtle variations of hue, drifting from green toward faint violet tones, then back again, in a sequence too regular to dismiss as coincidence. This chromatic cycling was faint, detectable only through sensitive imaging systems, but it was real, measurable, and persistent. Such behavior was unprecedented in known interstellar objects. Variations in color typically indicate shifts in surface composition or changes in solar illumination, yet 3I Atlas exhibited transitions independent of orientation or distance from the Sun. The color shifts pulled researchers into new lines of inquiry. Spectrometers detected fluctuating intensities of uncommon compounds, some associated with ionized gases, others reminiscent of materials produced under immense cosmic pressures. The shifting spectral lines suggested that the object's surface was either undergoing continuous chemical reactions or being influenced by an unknown internal process that reorganized its outer layers. The original NASA image had shown a strangely textured exterior, but these new observations implied an even deeper complexity: that the surface was dynamic, not static, subtly reorganizing at intervals aligned with the light cycles. This idea challenged conventional astrophysical assumptions. Interstellar bodies, after spending millions of years in cold, desolate space, should be inert. Yet 3I Atlas behaved as though responding to stimuli. While scientists hesitated to draw premature conclusions, the implications were hard to ignore. A visitor from another star system, showing dynamic activity upon entering the gravitational and radiative reach of the Sun, suggested a sensitivity or structure unfamiliar to solar system objects. It forced researchers to consider that 3I Atlas might be composed of exotic materials whose properties shift under stellar exposure, much like certain minerals on Earth transform when heated or compressed. But these explanations strained credibility. Shifts in chemical composition should have produced erratic changes, not patterned cycles. Meanwhile, new measurements revealed that the object emitted a faint electromagnetic hum, detectable only at extremely low frequencies. Radio telescopes recorded a consistent background resonance, subtle yet undeniably present. While not structured enough to imply artificiality, the hum suggested charged particles interacting within a confined environment, something akin to internal magnetic turbulence. The idea that 3I Atlas contained an active magnetized core intrigued a subset of planetary scientists. For a body of its size to generate such noise, it would require conductive materials and movement within, perhaps remnants of a frozen metallic nucleus fracturing under solar heating. But this again conflicted with the near-perfect geometric patterns captured in the NASA image. Natural metallic cores do not break into symmetrical fragments, nor do they support fractal repeating structures across their exterior. In the weeks that followed, researchers noticed an additional anomaly. The object's apparent density varied depending on its observed orientation. Radar reflections returned inconsistent mass estimates, suggesting that 3I Atlas might not be uniformly solid. Instead, it seemed to contain cavernous spaces or internal chambers large enough to influence gravitational readings. These voids were not randomly distributed. The mass differences followed a rotational pattern, implying structural alignment deep beneath the surface. The NASA image, when re-examined in this new context, took on greater significance. those luminous cracks and rib-like formations were not just surface markings, they might have corresponded to internal architecture. This revelation prompted 3D reconstructions using data from multiple observatory angles. The emerging models depicted an elongated object filled with interlacing hollow pathways, branching like tunnels or veins. The structure appeared partially collapsed in some regions, intact in others, creating a labyrinthine network that reached from the surface deep toward the core. Such a configuration was unlike any naturally formed comet or asteroid. Even bodies shaped by tidal destruction or explosive fragmentation do not produce organized internal lattices. Something about 3I Atlas hinted at formation under constraints or conditions that left behind ordered complexity rather than chaotic rubble. Another breakthrough came when ultraviolet imaging revealed faint halos around the object, thin, filament-like emissions that extended farther than expected. These UV filaments mirrored the visible glowing structures captured in the original NASA photograph, but expanded much farther into space, forming arcs and loops that drifted behind the object like ghostly tendrils. Unlike typical comet tails, which disperse irregularly in the solar wind, these filaments curved with consistent radii, as if guided by invisible frameworks. Some astrophysicists proposed that the filaments might represent charged dust caught in stable magnetic or electrostatic patterns around the object. But the precision of the arcs suggested something more intricate, collective behavior rather than random dispersion. This created a new area of study, the idea that 3I Atlas possessed a form of structured dust environment influenced by internal fields. If true, this would place the object in a category unlike any known interstellar body, one capable of shaping its surroundings subtly but perceptibly, as though enveloped by an aura of organized particulate matter. The object's rotational behavior added yet another layer of complexity. Instead of spinning at a constant rate, 3I Atlas exhibited minuscule but measurable fluctuations, speeding up and slowing down in gentle waves. These oscillations corresponded closely with the light pulses and spectral changes recorded earlier, suggesting that all three phenomena might stem from the same underlying mechanism. The coherence between rotation, glow intensity, and spectral shifts hinted at a deep interconnectivity within the object's internal structure. In natural celestial bodies, these attributes rarely share synchronized cycles. The rotational irregularities could have been caused by uneven heating or asymmetric outgassing, but the consistency of the cycles again resisted these familiar explanations. Scientists began to consider that the object's internal temperature, previously identified as anomalously high, might vary over time. Infrared readings supported this. Thermal maps revealed pockets of warming and cooling migrating across the interior in slow, wave-like motions. These thermal waves traveled through the object along specific paths, following routes corresponding to the internal cavities suggested by density scans. This indicated not only that energy moved through 3I Atlas, but that it moved predictably, almost systematically, as if channeled along pre-existing conduits. The presence of these conduits revived earlier discussions about the possibility that the object originated near extreme astrophysical phenomena, a planetary body subject to intense gravitational forces, perhaps near the event horizon of a collapsed star or in the debris field of a neutron star, might have formed such channels under conditions that defy normal geological processes. The idea that 3I Atlas could be a shard flung across interstellar space by a catastrophic event took hold among those seeking natural explanations for its complexity. Yet even this theory strained to account for the object's rhythmic behaviors and internal pulses, which implied ongoing activity rather than ancient scars frozen in time. While researchers wrestled with scientific puzzles, the world's fascination continued to grow. The NASA image became iconic not just because of its beauty, but because it represented an object whose nature remained defiantly elusive. New images enhanced by ground-based observatories added layers of detail, but never replaced the original. Instead, they served as extensions of its mystery. The evolving public discussion branched into new territories as fresh data arrived. Now people speculated about the possibility of exotic materials, unknown states of matter, or interactions with cosmic rays that produce the observed glow. One especially intriguing line of inquiry centered around the possibility that the object consisted of superionic phases, exotic forms of ice theorized to exist inside water-rich exoplanets subjected to immense pressure. Superionic ice conducts electricity, glows under certain conditions, and forms lattice-like patterns. If 3I Atlas was once part of a massive exoplanet's mantle, its unusual appearance might reflect its origins. The glowing cracks could be remnants of phase transitions triggered when internal pressure diminished, releasing trapped charges. This theory offered a tantalizing compromise between the object's natural origin and its extraordinary properties. However, no known superionic material exhibited rhythmic light emissions, leaving another gap unresolved. Meanwhile, attention turned to the object's interaction with solar radiation as it continued its inward journey. Solar probes detected disturbances in the solar wind trailing behind the object. The streams of charged particles shifted slightly whenever 3I Atlas passed through them, forming temporary eddies or spirals. These disruptions were small but detectable, suggesting that the object influenced the surrounding space in ways disproportionate to its size. This influence could only arise from strong magnetic or electrostatic fields, supporting the theory that 3I Atlas possessed some form of energetic environment extending beyond its surface. This induced new questions. If the object had a magnetic field, what generated it? How strong was it? Could it have been formed during its ejection from its original star system? Or did it originate from an internal process that continued to operate even after millions of years in the interstellar void? Such questions reignited debates about whether the interior of 3I Atlas was entirely inert or still undergoing some form of energy redistribution. Around this time, a deeper examination of the NASA image revealed faint indentations on one side of the object. Long, shallow grooves arranged in parallel, like the scoring of a colossal chisel. Initially dismissed as compression artifacts from imaging equipment, later analysis suggested they were real, physical features. These grooves aligned with some of the internal pathways reconstructed through radar mapping. They hinted at external influences occurring long before the object entered the solar system, perhaps from collisions with high-velocity cosmic particles or interactions with violent astrophysical environments. Yet these grooves were too uniform to attribute solely to damage. They followed curvature patterns consistent with the internal cavity architecture, implying that whatever forces shaped the inside of 3I Atlas also affected its exterior. This realization pushed researchers toward the idea that the object was a remnant of a much larger, highly ordered structure formed under conditions unlike anything observed in the solar system. It might not have been intentionally constructed, but it emerged from processes so foreign that the distinction between natural and artificial blurred. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on NASA's shocking 3I Atlas image and its possible impact worldwide? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.